Hello everyone, I am Dr. Parul Malhotra, Associate Professor, Jagannath University, Jaipur. In my today's video, we'll be studying about approaches to development communication. There are overall 4 approaches that we'll be studying in today's video. The first is empathy, second localized approach, third diffusion of innovation, and fourth is magic multiplier. So let us begin with these approaches. Communication for development has witnessed broader shift in theories and models of economic and social development over a period of time. With the onset of decade of 50s, the national governments, international community, and the academia recognized the importance of meeting the information and communication needs of marginalized and vulnerable people, especially in integrating them with empowerment process. These development partners understood the role that communication can play in empowering people to influence the decisions that affect their quality of lives. Communication for development is one of the most critical and inclusive ways to expand access to these new opportunities. Communication for development is social process that promotes dialogue between communities and decision makers at local, national, and regional levels. Its goals are to promote, develop, and implement policies and programs that enhance the quality of life for all. The communication for development has emerged through a sustained churning process that encompassed the evolutionary stages of the development communication. In this video, we will discuss the role of communication in development, difference between development motivation and development participation, along with the different approaches to development communication. So let us begin with the first approach, that is the empathy. Whenever we talk about empathy, you always should relate it to the dictionary meaning, that is, putting yourself into others' shoes and realizing their situation. So, empathy is the first step in development communication. In previous videos, we had studies about what is development and what is development communication and why it is required. And it was also mentioned that government has been taking a lot of efforts and a lot of steps for the people of their country. But unless and until people realize the importance of development and they are able to connect with what development can do for their betterment, only then the things can change. That is, unless and until you put yourself into a better situation, you realize what a better country would be to live in. What if I get myself vaccinated and my children vaccinated? What if I am educated and my children are educated? You would be more able to reconnect with your environment and those development policies. So, according to David Lerner, every change in society must originate and begin in the hearts of the people. If the people would like to change, only then the development would begin. Not only that, he saw the media as machines, inspiring people for better things in life. This means that people can only change if they want to change, and it can only originate from their minds and from their heart. That it would be wastage of money and time if only government is making plans, and if people don't want to change, things can never change. And to make people realize about development, media can be an important motivator. Media can act like machines so that they can inspire people towards better things in life. Daniel Lerner, 1958, in his book Passing the Traditional Society, saw the problem of modernizing traditional society. He saw the spread of literacy resulting from urbanization as a necessary precondition to more complete modernization that would include participatory political institutions. Development was largely a matter of increasing productivity, and to increase this productivity, one must aspire and it must begin in the psyche of the people. Hence, it is basically psychological. Urbanization, literacy, plus economic and participation they all have the media exposure. That is, if you want to be urbanized, you want to be literate. And if you want to be economically and politically participative, you have to be literate. So it has an interlinking, and along with this all, you should have a media exposure, as media can act as machines and it can inspire people for better things in life. According to David Lerner, development failed because peasants were unable to empathize or imaginatively identified with the new role and a changed, better way of life, and so remained fatalist, unambitious, and resistant to change. That is, those who never wanted to change, they were not able to empathize. They were not able to see, yes, what is good for them and what is bad for them. They were not able to imagine that what a better future will be with the development. So they always remained peasants. They were unambitious and they did not want to change. Every change in society must originate and begin in the hearts of people. If the people would like to change, only then the development would begin. What is required is that some means of providing such people with clues as to what better things in life might be. Lerner saw the media as filling this need of promoting interest among the better people for a better life. Not only that, he saw the media as machines, inspiring people for better things in life. He said empathy endows a person with the capacity to imagine himself as proprietor of a big grocery store in a city, to wear nice clothes and live in a nice house, to be interested in what is going on in the world and to get out of his hole. He pointed out to the correlation between economic productivity and the media provisions in different countries in support of his theory. The richest country had the most newspapers, the radios, and so on, and poorer the least. So this is what that says, that yes, media is required there to promote interest among the people for a better life. Media can instigate the feeling of empathy in people. You must have seen this aspect in many of the films and many of the advertising campaigns that are related with the development issues. It is only empathy that can make you realize what a better country would look like. You can see ample of examples in all the social campaigns or any movies which have been woven around a social cause. Let us come to the second approach. The second approach is localized approach. This approach advocates that information transmitted through media must be locally and functionally relevant to the audience. This is what is localized approach. The development programs must be local to meet the local needs, which vary widely in different regions and sub-regions in a large country like India due to the diversity of climate, cultures, and languages. Localized approach would enable communicators to design messages which will be relevant in terms of utility, timeliness, applicability, and specificity. This means that whatever the things are being done by media, that is the promotion of the development campaigns or the plans and policy, they must be locally and functionally relevant to the audience. It can be the language of a campaign, or it can be the problems that a campaign is being addressed. It should be localized, that is catering to whatever is the requirement of the audience. So let us look at the relationship between communication, and for that, development can be broadly divided into two things. The first is the macro society level studies by Wilbur Graham and Daniel Lerner. They gave direct support to the view that modern mass media system is an important requirement for development. That's a macro society level. Then micro societal level study argues that information of certain kind generates appetite for new things and new way of doing things, which ultimately sets the process of development. Now look at the benefits of the localized approach. Localized approach would enable the communicators to design messages which will be relevant in terms of utility, timeliness, applicability, and specificity. The approach would tailor messages for local conditions. The approach can overcome infrastructural difficulties. Such an approach will allow greater involvement and participation of the audience in the communication process, as the needs of the people vary widely in different regions and sub-regions. In a large developing country like India, there is a diversity of culture and languages. So, what are the benefits of localized approaches? That one can be very local while addressing the needs of the audience. And in a country like India, where there is diversity of culture and languages, the need of people also vary from different regions and sub-regions. People have different needs in tribal areas, different needs in the urban areas, and also in the rural areas. So what government is doing is they are making different plans for the different regions, right? And when the media is addressing them, they can do it as per the local languages and the availability of the local media. So this actually helps the better reach of the program. So this should be kept in mind, and this is what is being always kept in mind. Do's and don'ts of localized approach. There should be a proper need assessment of the local population. The socio-economic condition of the local people should be kept in mind before designing the message. The geographical and political conditions of a local area bear a lot of significance for message designing and delivery. Preferences should be given to local media and local resource person for the execution of communication tasks. Localized approach. A localized approach to address the challenge of youth unemployment in particular, there is a need for a much more effective balance between centralized growth focused policy and localized intervention, which is reflective of the local economic base and the skills and knowledge of those in local government and other public authorities. Our question would be, how can a more localized approach to tackling the youth unemployment in particular area be enabled? For this, you need to find an answer. What I have added certain points here, but you can also check what the other things can be done. So you know, I'm just trying to give you an example that how a particular problem in a particular area can be tackled. First of all, we can examine the scale of the youth unemployment. That is how much the number of youth are unemployed. Then identifying the policy approach to the government to tackle the youth unemployment. Third, exploring the merits of localized approaches to tackling youth unemployment. And see, so here we are first of all examining the scale of the youth unemployment, that how much youth is unemployed and what are the reasons that they are unemployed. Then we try to identify the policy approaches of the government that they have initiated, and then we are trying to explore the merits of those programs to tackle the youth unemployment. See, to further exemplify it, if you understand, like I told you to, you should also jot down the important points. So what you can do is see, identify what are the problems in the urban areas and the rural areas. That is how, what is the scale of unemployment in both two areas, why youth are unemployed, what are the different programs that government had made for the rural unemployment and the urban unemployment, and how you can use the localized approach to tackle unemployment in the rural areas and then in the urban areas. If you do this exercise, you would be able to better understand the localized approach, that is addressing the local problems with the local solutions. This is what localized approach says. The localized media approach helps to plan messages specially designed for various local groups. This facilitates two-way communication by allowing greater involvement and participation of the audience in the communication process. In case of any problem at the local level, the solution is found there and then. Naturally, for particular specific situation, the solution would also be specific. There cannot be a general approach. This localized approach generally yields a positive result. I hope you are able to understand what the localized approach is. You can find many examples here, like agricultural practices are only being applied in the rural areas, and the efforts are being taken only for the rural areas. Similarly, the problem of population, not the population, but the problem of traffic jams and the pollutions is being mostly taken care of in the urban areas, as they are facing the more problems of pollution and the traffic jams. Whereas if we move to the tribal areas, you will find that we have a different set of problems for the tribal people, like they need to be sensitized for education, the sanitation practices, plus they are not much aware about their rights, which is of the prime importance other than the agriculture or the traffic jams or the pollution problem, which is actually not there. And if we carry forward our previous example of unemployment, then these three areas have different approaches towards unemployment. So localized approach emphasizes for the local problems and giving them the localized solutions. All right. Let us come to the third approach, that is diffusion of innovations. According to Everett M. Rogers, the mass communication influence appears to operate by a two-step flow process through the awareness of mass media, development of favorable attitudes, and adoption by interpersonal channels, particularly opinion leaders. He saw the diffusion of new ideas and their practices as a crucial component of the modernization process. It has been found that when a message is propagated, a segment of the population adopts it and develops a positive attitude towards it. This can happen in the case of a product, fertilizer, seeds, ideas, journals, etc. Then the people who adopt first, directly or indirectly, shape the positive attitude of others who remain indifferent to the message. This is true in places where information and literacy levels are low. Simple people would like to get confirmation from the people living in therein proximity. You can think about this process in your daily life. How many times you need information about a book, about a product, or about any incidences from your friends, classmates, office mates, neighbors, and other. Women especially need a lot of confirmation from others before they adopt something. See, what diffusion of innovation says is that is, you can first of all break them into different words, diffusion and innovation. So innovation is something which is new, that is new thing in the market. It can be any technology, it can be a dress, it can be any kind of system. And diffusion is that is passing it on from one people to another, right? And what happens is that is in diffusion of innovation, when we talk about this, first of all a segment of population adopts it, a new technology, maybe a new idea, right? And then when they develop a positive attitude towards it, then they pass it on to the other people. Like, and many of you must depend on others opinion, like even before going for a movie, we always see what are the reviews. I hope my money is not wasted. These are the thoughts that come in your mind. Even when you are adopting a new fashion also, you look for what fashion designers are saying, or probably what the celebrities are actually wearing, and are your colleagues are also following it, then you go for that. This is what diffusion of innovation says. In one of our videos in first semester, we had studied about the concept of opinion leaders. The role of opinion leaders, it becomes important here, because opinion leaders are the people who are closer to the reality. They are the first who adopt a change, and then they transfer their knowledge and experience to the people who then embrace the change once the opinion leaders have adopted that, right? So let us see the categories of people who adopt the technology first and then who adopt later on. There are 5 established adopter categories, and while the majority of the general population tends to fall in the middle category, that is the early majorities and the late majorities, it is still necessary to understand the characteristics of the target population. When promoting an innovation, there are different strategies used to appeal to the different adopter categories. The first category is of the innovators, second, early adopters, third, early majority, fourth, late majority, and the last is the laggards. Dear students, I must tell you here that whenever you are learning about these five categories, it has to be in the same order: innovators, adopters, early majority, late majority, and then the laggards. Right? I hope you can see this picture on the screen. And in my previous slide, I had mentioned that most of the population falls in the middle categories, that the early majority and the late majority. So the 2.5% of the population is only the innovators, those who are the people who actually launch the new technology in the market. 2.5% are the innovators, then 13.5% are the early adopters, those who early adopt the technology. Then comes the early majority, which compasses 34%, and then next 34% is the late majority, and the last are the laggards. So the least are the 2.5% innovators, that is those who are actually producing the things. They are evolving or maybe innovating new things. And the early adopters, the risk takers, they are very less, 13.5%. Early majority, late majority are kind of similar, and the rest, those who are the late adopters, they are the laggards. So let us study the features of these one by one. Innovators, these are the people who want to be the first to try the innovation. They are venturesome and interested in new ideas. These people are very willing to take risks and are often the first to develop new ideas. Very little, if anything, needs to be done to appeal to this population. Second comes early adopters. These are the people who represent opinion leaders, as I just mentioned. They enjoy leadership roles and embrace change opportunities. They are already aware of the need to change and so are very comfortable adopting new ideas. Strategies to appeal to this population include how to do manuals and information sheets on the implementation. They do not need any information to convince them to change. To add on here, innovators, they usually advertise their idea, and besides advertising, they use the early adopters to propagate their ideas. You must have seen a trend these days of the influencer marketing on many social media networking sites. So I would say that these influencers are the early adopters. They usually do not need anything to convince them to change. They simply try to convince you to buy those things. And they are already aware of whatever the things are going on, and they are very comfortable in adopting any new ideas that is in the market. But their number is few. If everyone is part of the early adopters, then no one is going to become an opinion leader. So the people, those who are experienced and knowledgeable, their percentage is less than the people, those who are the early and the late majority. So I hope you understand. Innovators are the people, those who design the product, innovate the things, and early adopters are kind of the influencers or the opinion leaders or the people with an experience, those who are actually closer to the realities. They are comfortable adopting new ideas, and that they just try to convince you to buy those ideas if they are satisfied with that particular idea. Then comes the early majority. These people are rarely the leaders, but they do adopt new ideas before the average person does. They typically need to see evidence that the innovation works before they are willing to adopt it. I would rather say that they are usually the risk takers. They are ready to adopt or buy new technologies, and once they are able to adopt it, they are happy, then they become the success stories. Or you must have seen a thing like testimonials, happy customers, then they become the testimonials, and they become the, you can say, the success stories of for a particular company or for a particular brand. So this is what the early majority say. They are the risk takers. I would like to give an example of a thing that is, long back the trend of hair colors came in the market, and people then experimented with different styles in hair colors, and they also chose different colors for coloring their hair. So the innovators were the companies, those who innovated it. Then the celebrities were the early adopters, those who actually adopted it, risked it on their hair, and they influenced the other people. Then the early majority were the people, those who were very style conscious. They were very style conscious, maybe rich people, the elite class, and ready to take risk, who actually got their hair colored when they saw their favorite celebrities. And this is this population which comes in the list of happy customers, or as the testimonials, and then they affect the rest of the population. That is the late majorities and the laggards, those who are the last to adopt any kind of change. When they see that yes, now everyone has adopted it, so I must also go for it. So the late majority people, these people are skeptical of change and will only adopt an innovation after it has been tried by the majority. Strategies to appeal to this population include information on how many other people have tried the innovation and have adopted it successfully. Now comes the laggards. These people are bound by tradition and very conservative. They are very skeptical of change and the hardest group to bring on the board. Strategies to appeal to this population include statistics, fears, appeal, and pressure from the people in the order adapter group. So these are the 5 categories of people. Right, now let us look at certain examples of the diffusion of innovation theory. While the diffusion of innovation theory was developed during mid-90s, most new technologies in human progress, whether it is the printing press during the 16th century or the internet in the 20th century, have followed a similar path to widespread adoption. The diffusion of innovation is extensively used by marketers to promote the adoption of their products. For examples, marketers can find a set of people passionate about the product to receive it for free in return for sharing it widely. These are the early adopters. They are responsible for evangelizing its utility to the mainstream audience. Maybe some influential people, that is, they are ready to receive a free product, and in return they would be sharing it widely if they like the product, right? Then a recent example of this method is Facebook. It started off as a product targeted at students and professionals in educational institutes. As students' use increased beyond the school, the social media site spread to mainstream society and across border. So Facebook started as a method or as a site that could connect the students and professionals in the education institutes only. But when it became very popular, and students shared their testimonials and the list of happy things that they do with the Facebook, it became very popular and entered into the mainstream society and across borders. Then influencer marketing, I was just talking about it, is another use of diffusion of innovation theory. Social media influencers are often contacted by brands with new products or services. The influencers become early adopters who use and post about the new products, normalizing it for a mainstream audience and causing it used to spread. The diffusion of innovation theory is also used to design public health programs. Again, a set of people are chosen as early adopters to a new technology or practice and spread awareness about it to others. However, cultural limitations or people access to resources and social support for the new behavior can impede these kinds of health programs from being successful. In the context of public health, this type of behavior diffusion is also more useful for encouraging people to adopt positive behaviors rather than limit or seize negative behavior. I hope you are understand with the concept of the type of people or the audiences that are there in this approach. Now let us look at the steps in the diffusion of innovation. Diffusion of innovation happens through a 5-step process of decision making. The 5 steps are awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and adoption. Though Roger renamed these steps like this later in his book. That is, first is knowledge, then the persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. So, whenever in exam, if it is asked the steps in the diffusion of innovation, you are supposed to write the second list, that is the knowledge, persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. So, these are the 5 stages in the decision innovation process. You have knowledge of the product, you are persuaded, then you make a decision, and if you accept it, that there is an implementation and the confirmation. The first step in the diffusion of innovation is knowledge. This is the point at which the would-be adopter is first exposed to the innovation itself. They do not have enough information to make a decision to purchase on and have not yet been sufficiently inspired to find out more. At this stage, marketers will be looking to increase awareness of the product and provide enough education about the prospective adopters move to the second stage. As it was once said by whom we are not sure, but it was quoted, if the user can't find it, it does not exist. So knowledge is the first step that has to be done from by the side of the innovator himself, and this is actually that he gets enough information, not too much, but yes, an information about the product, that what the product is all about. Then persuasion is the point at which the prospective adopter is open to the idea of purchase. Maybe he is influenced by the early adopters. They are actively seeking information which will inform their eventual decision. This is the point at which marketers will be seeking to convey the benefits of the product in detail, and this can be done by an influencer marketer or a group of people, those who have adopted it first, that are the early adopters, talking about the benefits of the product. There will be a conscious effort to sell the product to someone at this stage of diffusion of innovation, but the decision would eventually only happen if the buyer is informed adequately and he is influenced adequately. Eventually, the adopter would be the would-be adopter must make a decision. They will weigh up the pros and cons of adoption and either accept the innovation or reject it. It is worth noting that this is the most opaque part of the process. Rogers cites this as the most difficult phase on which to acquire intelligence. This is at least in part due to the fact that people do not make rational decisions in many instances. They make a decision based on their underlying perceptions and feelings, and following the decisions, they attempt to rationalize that decision. Thus, obtaining an understanding of the decision-making process is challenging. The reason given following a decision are not likely to be representative of the actual reason that a decision was made. Then comes the implementation. Once a decision to adopt a product has been made, the product will, in most cases, be used by the purchaser. This stage is when the adopter makes a decision as to whether or not the product is actually useful to them. They may also seek out further information to either support the use of the product or to better understand the product in the context. This phase is interesting because it suggests that designers and marketers alike need to consider the ownership process in detail. How can a user obtain useful information in the post-sale environment? The quality of the implementation exercise is going to be determined to a lesser or greater extent by the ease of access to information and quality of that information. Now, next comes the confirmation. This is the point at which the user evaluates their decision and decides whether they will keep using the product or abandon use of the product. This phase can only be ended by abandonment of a product, otherwise it is continual. For example, you may buy a new car today. You are likely to keep using the car for a number of years. Eventually, However, you'll be probably sell the car and buy a new one. This phase will normally involve a personal examination of the product and also a social one. The user will seek confirmation from their peers, colleagues, friends, etc. Now let us look at the limitations of diffusion of innovation theory. Much of the evidence for this theory, including the adopter category, did not originate in public health, and it was not developed to explicitly apply to adoption of new behaviors or health innovations. It does not foster a participatory approach to adoption of a public health program. It works better with adoption of behaviors rather than cessation or prevention of behaviors. It does not take into account an individual's resources or social support to adopt the new behavior or innovation. This theory has been used successfully in many fields, including communication, agriculture, public health, criminal justice, social work, and marketing. In public health, diffusion of innovation theory is used to accelerate the adoption of important public health programs that typically aim to change the behavior of a social system. For example, an intervention to address a public health program is developed and the intervention is promoted to people in a social system with the goal of adoption based on diffusion of innovation theory. The most successful adoption of a public health program results from understanding the target population and the factors influencing their rate of adoption. I hope you are clear with the concept of diffusion of innovation. We have studied this concept in much detail. Now let us learn about the last approach of development communication, which is magic multiplier. According to Wilbur Schramm, social change of great magnitude is required. To achieve it, people must be informed, persuaded, and educated. Information must flow, not only to them, but also from them, so that their needs can be known and they might participate in the acts and decisions of nation building. Works should be organized and skills should be learned at all the levels of society for better utilization of the resources of society. Mass media is called the magic multiplier as it can multiply the messages and reach a number of people very fast and at one go. Its output does have great potential and modernizing effect. It is their content that is the key to use in the development. Mass media are important in spreading awareness of new possibilities and practices. But at the stage where decisions are being made about whether to adopt or not to adopt, personal communication is far more likely to be influential. Therefore, the general conclusion of this line of thought is that mass communication is less likely than personal influence to have a direct effect on social behavior. Dear students, I would like to mention here the last approach, the magic multiplier. It says that media acts as a magic multiplier. That is, they are able to influence the audience at a very fast pace. And whenever a change of a great magnitude is required, then media can be the only you can say a tool which can be used to inform, persuade, and educate the masses, like the campaigns that we have seen during National Literacy Mission and Swachh Bharat campaign or Pulse Polio campaign, or maybe the COVID-19 vaccination and the sanitation programs that were actually held. So it was the mass media that was able to change the preferences and the attitude of the audience towards these issues. But by and large, whenever there are certain minute things or whenever the decisions are being made personally, the audience always look for certain kind of guidance, and there the personal communication or the interpersonal communication becomes more important. So the development communicators use a mix of empathy, the localized approach, which is being at times required, and then the diffusion of innovation, that is a need for a need for an opinion leaders or some influencers, or need for a testimonial so that people adopt to that change. And all of this can be used through media to influence the audience. So this is what these approaches indicate. Wilbur Schramm in 1964 in his book Mass Media and National Development, which was produced for UNESCO, became almost a blueprint program of action for all the development communicators. Schramm stated that content is the key to their use in development. Social change of great magnitude can be accomplished when people are informed, persuaded, and educated. Information must flow at all the levels so that they can participate in the acts and decisions of nation building. He also argued that each person would have requirement of information of the work he would undertake, and there being millions of workers would require information of various types. The conventional channels of communication would be able to meet this demand. Therefore, modern communication technologies would be of great use to meet this demand by multiplying the messages and reaching each and every worker simultaneously. Now, let us look at some of the arguments for magic multiplier. We need magic multiplier for the following reasons. As mentioned earlier, for social change of great magnitude, people must be informed, educated, motivated, and persuaded. Information must flow not only to them but also for them. That is, their feedback should also be taken so that we can know what they need. Their needs can be known, and they might participate in the acts and the decisions of nation building. As the required amount of information and learning is vast, so the targeted population work should be organized, skills should be learned at all the levels of society so that a better utilization of the resources can be done by the society. That is, people should be informed, educated, persuaded, their feedback should be taken, there should be work should be done, they should learn skills at the basic level so that they should know how they can use the resources. In many of the campaigns run by the government, you must have seen government tells about the pros and cons and how to use a particular thing. Like at the time of elections, it is being told repeatedly, exercise your right to vote, and then how the vote has to be casted, that is going to the booth, carrying the Aadhaar cards, and then even when there are campaigns related to any kind of the vaccination, then again the do's and don'ts are informed through various campaigns. Even at the COVID-19 time also, we have seen government has given issued lots of advisories through media, so that is making them skilled at all the levels so that they know how to use a particular resource, how to use a particular thing. The available channels of communication like interpersonal, group communication, traditional media are incapable to undertake this task, as this will require a lot of time and resources. For a developing country, for a bigger country like us, it is difficult to gather a large pool of resources and wait for such a long time. Mass media, with its magic reach, can do this job in less time and resources. That is why mass media is called as magic multiplier. Wilbur extended the arguments of Lerner and Rogers' influence fewer of modernization through mass media, which he termed the magic multipliers. His work was part of the efforts of United Nations and UNESCO for a program of concrete actions to build up press, radio, broadcasting, film, and TV facilities in countries in the process of economic and social development. To Schramm, mass media were agents of social change, almost miraculous in their power to bring about that changes. He argued that mass media could help accomplish the transitions to new customs and practices, the innovations, Rogers, in some cases to different social relationships. Behavior must necessarily be substantial change in attitudes, beliefs, skills, and social norms. First, awareness of a need is there. that people should be empathized why they want to change, what would be the benefit of the change. Second, the need to invent or borrow behavior, that why there is a need for invention, why there is a need for a change behavior, that is through diffusion of innovation, then working on the local components, and then using media as a magic multiplier. This is what we are talking about. Hence, a nation that wants to accelerate the process of development will try to make its people more widely and quickly aware of needs and of the opportunities for meeting them, will facilitate the decision process, and will help the people put the new practices smoothly and swiftly into effect. Scram argued forcefully that the mass media had the potential to widen horizons, to focus attention, to raise aspirations, and to create a climate for development. He was optimistic about the potential of the mass media and also the education media, such as programmed instructions, language laboratories, electronic digital computers in all types of education and training. He recommended that a developing country should review its restrictions on the importing of informational material, should not hesitate to make use of new technical development in communication in cases where these new development fit its needs and capabilities. The challenges, he concluded, was to put the resources and power of modern communication skillfully and fully behind economic and social development. He described as casual, almost miraculous, that modern mass communication should be available to multiply informational resources. By multiplying the messages and reaching each and every worker simultaneously. For social change of great magnitude, people again must be informed, educated, motivated, and persuaded. Information must flow not only for them but also from them so that their needs can be known. They might participate in the acts and decisions of the nation building. The available channels of communication, like interpersonal, group communication, and traditional media, are incapable to under this task, as this will require a lot of time and resources. For a developing countries, it's difficult to gather a large pool of resources and wait for such a long period. Thus, mass media, with its magical reach, can do this job in less time and resources. So, this mass media audit, that is the magic multiplier audit, finds out that mass media succeeded in reaching a vast majority of the population in less time and resources. But it failed in achieving its basic objective, of which it became a magic multiplier. It did a commendable job in spreading awareness, but it could not give expected results in persuading and educating the target audience. It's not that media was a failure here. It is they were able to reach to the masses, but when it comes to persuading and educating, then interpersonal channels are much important. So that is why the combination of diffusion, localized, empathy, and media. So mass media as a magic multiplier is doing a commendable job, but it could not give expected results in persuading, that is, and educating the targeted population, that is, it is the interpersonal channels that are required. It was found that persuasion, motivation, and education on something is best achieved by close interactions, which is possible in interpersonal and group communication only. The modern mass communication was almost a miracle, as they are able to multiply the available international resources. It is not possible to imagine national, economic, and social development without some modern information multiplier. Indeed, without mass communication, the great movements would never have come about at all. A lot of feedback is required when one uses communication for development. It should never be a one-way traffic. The users should be able to give feedback to the implementers, the program planners, the program producers, so that the success or the failure of the programs could be judged, and this feedback can be utilized for improving those programs and while implementing the other new programs. So a combination of different approaches are being used, as per the requirement of what is the need of the hour, what is the need of the particular area. So to summarize what I've just spoke about, one is the empathy that is required. Then we need a localized approach, the local thinking, the local adaptability, the local usability. Then comes diffusion of innovation, that is the interpersonal motivation. And the last, using the media for all the these approaches, that is to reach a large number of people at a similar point of time. We need media because it is media only that can act as a magic multiplier. So thank you for today. I hope you have understood the topic. Thanks for watching the video.